This is Member Spotlight presented by Rising Coaches, the largest coaching tree in basketball where your logo or level doesn't define your importance. For just $10 a month, you can become a member of the Rising Coaches. For more relationships, development, and opportunities at risingcoaches.com. I'm your guest host for today's episode, Blake Cochran, head men's basketball coach at Fort Scott Community College. And today's guest is Coach Shaun Gutting. Coach, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Shaun Gutting, assistant men's basketball coach at Southern Utah University.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You let's go ahead and tell the listeners how you got into coaching and
Mhm.
kind of how your tree is kind of just spread out from there.
Sure. Yeah. So I was really lucky, man. When I was trying to get into college coaching, a former high school coach of mine from like eighth, ninth grade, James Miller, I'd got the head coaching job at New Mexico Junior College. And while he was there, they were looking for a volunteer assistant. And, they called me. I was looking to get in. I was like 24, 25 years old at the time. Went down to Hobbs, New Mexico. Couldn't even tell you where it was on a map at the time. Went down there, saw the setup, was excited to work for Coach Miller. Coach Brian Laurie was the assistant. They were both big time and taught me a lot. So I just jumped in from there, and I was living for free on campus and eating for free in the cafeteria like the fellas, man. So, it was an interesting experience, but I wouldn't change it for anything. There's a lot of guys who go through the grind that way, and I was lucky because Coach Miller really took care of me those 2 years when I was an assistant. So went from there to Casper. Worked for Coach Dan Russell at Casper for 1 year. Got lucky enough to become the head coach. After he left, we went on a really good run the last 4 years, last 5 years. His last year as a head coach, and my 4 years were all pretty productive, pretty successful. Had a lot of chances to go to Hutch, just missed it short. And Coach Jeter, found that I was the right guy to fit his staff this year. So I've been here for about a month.
Yeah, absolutely. I forgot to say congrats. I know that's exciting, and I know you've been on the recruiting trail pretty hard. So,
Yeah,
talking about like Coach Miller, I was a Division I assistant. Talk about the transition from how JUCO has prepared you to be a Division I assistant.
sure. I think it always rebounds off of the same things a lot of guys have said before me, which is, in junior college, you got to do everything.
Yeah,
You are one of two guys on staff, maybe three if you're lucky. So you have to experience recruiting, game scheduling, washing the gear, ordering the gear, academics, advising, everything you could think of. You got to do all yourself or with one other guy. So I think mostly what I've noticed so far, just kind of transitioning into this, is that everything at this level is very much more focused on one or two simple tasks
yeah,
versus, 10 to 12 that you're trying to kind of juggle at the same time and just hoping they work out.
yeah,
It's definitely unique. There's a lot of steps at this level to get things done, but ultimately it's to make sure things are done the right way.
yeah,
Um, so I think you know, especially with summer school going on, trying to finish signing our last of our scholarships, finish game scheduling, all that stuff. We're all kind of putting our hands on it here because we're all new staff.
hmm
And, when a player walks through the door and says he's got an issue or wants to work out or all this stuff, it's just a part of it. The junior college, you're used to that, right? You just go,
yeah,
all right, okay, I got to drop what I'm doing and help him for a second,
yeah,
So, um, that part isn't different at all,
mhm,
and I got some really good advice from some people when I got this job, guys who had been doing it for a while that, a lot of them consistently just told me, hey man, like, remember, it's all about the players,
yeah,
no matter what level you're at, where you're at, it's all about the players.
yeah.
So really looking forward to kind of getting our hands dirty and really working with them. We've done a couple of days of workouts, but, once we really kind of get going and can kind of put some of these other, little jobs to the side that we got to try and finish, that's the exciting part.
Yeah. How's practice been this week? Things going good so far?
Every coach will tell you they're terrible right now, right?
Yeah.
No, but, our guys are excited to be here. They're working hard. First 2 days, they've picked up things quickly from coach, and are really, really trying to work. So we got a really good group of kids, and we just got to try and finish it out here before August.
Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
So your first year at Casper, you guys went 32-3, correct?
Yep.
Yep. So talk about that transition from assistant coach to jumping to a very successful first year as a head coach at Casper.
Sure. Yeah. So, well, my first year as an assistant, we went 32-3. Then my first year as a head coach, we went 25-6.
Awesome.
And is the longest six. It's the furthest 6 inches you could slide in life, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you're sliding from the assistant chair to the head coach's chair. And every head coach will tell you the same thing before you get that opportunity. You just won't know until you do it.
Yeah.
It's a lot different when you're the one who's calling the timeouts. You're the one who's making the decisions. Everything relies on what what you think. As assistant coaches, we're all really smart. We know everything, right?
Yeah.
The moment it becomes you as a head coach, all of a sudden you got to think about 20 different angles. That first year was something that taught me in so many different ways. We have really good players. That helped a lot. Really good leader in Jalen Harris. Talented, smart group, guys who were older, had been in college for a while. Isaiah Banks, Eric Jamerman, some of those guys were third-year guys. They made the transition really easy. And then we signed a couple transfers that were in the same boat. And, so we went, we had a chance to win the region title. We're really close. Region was very good. Region 9 was really good that year. With Western Nebraska, Western Wyoming, NJC were all top 25 caliber teams,
Wow.
and the one thing I always look back on it that I got to remind myself too is that, it was like a week after a regional tournament, COVID hit my first year's head coach, and we were
Jeez.
all shut down.
Yeah.
So that was an experience that none of us had, right? So we were all learning from the fly, but on the fly. But I think you learn quickly that uh, your decisions need to be made with confidence and knowing that it's something that you can live with, no matter what, whether it's successful or it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because just like our players, we're going to fail. Head coaches are going to fail. They're going to lose games. They're going to make wrong decisions, call timeouts when they shouldn't, sub in the wrong guys, sub out the wrong guys, hold dudes accountable the right or wrong way. They're always going to make mistakes. And just knowing that you can learn from them, grow from them, and that not every player is the same.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Mhm.
I saw some stuff on, I looked some stuff up on Synergy. I saw you guys were top 15 in the country in points per possession offensively.
Mhm.
Do you want to talk about some stuff that you implement, some stuff that you found worked
Sure.
offensively that you like to touch on?
Yeah, we kind of developed ourselves over there as being one of the consistently better offensive teams in the country
Yeah.
for those 4 or 5 years. I think we were top 10 in points per game just in general, 3 of the 5 years I was at Casper.
Yeah.
And, a lot of it was, we started everything off with transition. That's what we really harped on and talked about from day one. And just getting the fellas to buy in to getting the ball up the floor. Scoring easy buckets, taking the easy ones when we could. And then it would always develop into, if you have to have really good players that can kind of score in certain different spots. My biggest thing was we didn't fight it, right? I
Yeah.
wasn't out there to teach them how to reinvent the wheel. We were just trying to find the best way, best spots for guys to score. Whether it's you in the mid post, you in the low block, you picking and popping, you in a middle ball screen by yourself, or quick guards by themselves with no ball screen, right? And it was all just understanding your own personnel and spending a lot of time seeing what guys are really, really good at and letting them thrive in those positions. That's how you're able to get them to start buying into maybe doing some other little things for you.
Yeah.
This last year, I mean, we had a couple of guys that could really put the ball in the hole. And, like Jamison Epps, Nestor could shoot it. Nestor Diacho could really shoot it. Jamison Epps could score on the block, score from 18 feet and in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
We had guards that knew their role and would pick their times. And, they were hard to stay in front of and could really shoot it. And we had, 5 or 6 guys that could shoot 35% plus from three. That always helps.
Yeah.
And I've learned that here too. Like Coach Jeter's kind of thinking the same way. He's like, and everybody says it, right? You have good shooting, you're going to give yourself a chance to win. And so hopefully you can teach them how to defend. Hopefully,
Yeah.
So, but I mean, at Casper we were really lucky because we had really good players. The school that was supportive of it and really wanted you to be successful. And we ended up being really good most of those years, getting the ball up the floor, finding guys in the right spots, right position for them to score, and trying to get creative as much as I could once we got scouted to make sure that they were getting those looks that
Yeah.
they're really comfortable with.
Yeah. After transition, when it broke down, did you typically run a set? Did you have some motion, flow, ball screen stuff that you guys went into?
We always our main thing was either motion flow with ball screens, like double ball screens, where there was one on each side.
Gotcha.
This last year, we did a lot of 5 out, a lot of the similar stuff you kind of see in the NBA a little bit, but I stole from a lot of NBA actions just because we had a 5-man that could pick and pop and could really shoot it and pass it, and our 4-man could really pass it too. So we got the ball in their hands in situations this year more than I've ever done in the past.
Yeah.
Past few years it's been ball screen actions until one of your dynamic guards can really get something. This year it was a lot of more 5 out. Whether it was zoom actions, down screens, whatever you wanted to do. And trying to teach guys how to read that stuff. Which is something that takes time. Luckily, we had some dudes that were pretty good and had a good feel on how to do it right away. And then I always think, you have to have. I probably had too many sets, mostly because I was the type of dude that would see something on Twitter or on Synergy or something and be like, "Oh, I'd like that," and and then I put it in and be like, "You use a third of them." Right, because it's just the flow is of the game is going too much. You want your guys to have some freedom, but I think it's important to have those as a coach just in your back pocket because you never know when you're going to use them. And especially the junior college level, you got to run stuff that you've ran stuff with your guys in practice, right? It's going to be hard to try and throw a new set at them at a timeout. Yeah. ATOs, man, the NBA, right? We can't drop something up for them and they just go out there and do it. It's harder for guys at that level that are that young to do it all the time, So we would try and do stuff that we've run consistently.
Yeah, that's good. Speaking of offense and, trying to find guys that run your offense, getting out and running transition, how do you look for that in recruiting?
That's a good question. I think you have to base first and foremost trying to establish whether a guy is just generally talented enough. Mm-hmm. And you can measure that whatever way you want. I remember James Miller always taught me early on, we want to sign guys that have at least one high major quality at New Mexico Junior College. Gotcha. Because we knew they just had one quality that you could say to a coach, he's high major at that. Mm-hmm. He might not be high major at some of this other stuff, but he can do that at a high major, whether it's athleticism, shooting, passing, feel, intangibles, whatever it is, right? So I tried to really implement that when I was at Casper as a head coach, and luckily I had, assistants there that really were good at recruiting and had a feel for what I needed. And then I think after that, it's the personality, right? What are they coming here for? Are they coming here to, showcase themselves? Or are they, the type of kids that you can get to really buy into your culture and your program?
Yeah.
It's always so hard to say. I think we get caught up, especially like in this day and age, the older culture was always about, hey, the system, you got to learn that guy's system. You got to play that guy's system. I think, now just with how the world is going and how, these generations are, you got to be adaptable to what you have. You might think guys are really good at something. They come to, campus and first couple of days, they're good at something else. They might not be as good at that as you thought they were, or, what are you going to do to try and put them in the best positions to be successful? And I just don't think we can be one track minded on that, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, we always looked for shooting first, whether they can dribble and pass, feel, I was always kind of right the second thing. And then I loved dudes that were really athletic, but I tried to balance that out with some of the first, knowing that, if you got a guy that can do all of it, then you probably got a pro, and they probably ain't coming to junior college, so, really just kind of trying to have a feel like what can you deal with and what can't you deal with?
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of recruiting, I know you guys had 2 NBA guys at New Mexico. Talk about how junior college helped those guys develop, and then what you guys did as a staff to help them maybe get over the top and make it to that level.
Yeah. That was my first year in college coaching, and I was as wide-eyed as those guys were. James Miller and Brian Laurie were already accustomed to what was going on. They knew what they were doing, and they had signed Chris Boucher and Kenrich Williams and Jeff Newberry, and a lot of guys on that team. That team was just really talented. Jeff Newberry was an All-American that started 2 years at Oklahoma State. And then we had two guys on that roster that both are starters or competing for starter minutes in the NBA right now. And part of it was just being a witness to see what they were doing. Those guys worked really, really hard, and they didn't fight the team aspect. That's what made them really special. And you could see it right away that these dudes were going to go pretty far. All those guys had some love. Newberry was the highest recruited out of all those guys, but Kenrich and Chris, going into the regular season and the conference, had just kind of started to make a name for themselves when they were at MJC. And then once we made it to Hutch that year, it was a wrap. Both of them were getting high major calls, 10 to 12 offers off of Hutch.
Wow.
It's just amazing how much that national tournament can help young men who deserve it. And you saw it this year again with guys. It still does it. And I think we spent a lot of time trying to develop them with what individuals, team stuff, but those guys bought in from day one, and we didn't have to fight them. And that's what made them so special. Their effort, they cared, they all had a reason for wanting to go professional, and they really let that reason carry them to where they were. So now it's cool just to see them play on TV. They're on TV, they're doing, living out their dreams. It was crazy. Like JUCO's good right now, but man, we had two NBA players and a Big 12 starter on that team, and we lost in the Sweet 16. Like JUCO used to be crazy different, right? I actually think it's kind of going that route again here in the next couple of years. Especially next year, I think there's going to be a lot of really talented teams.
Yeah.
So it just always goes in waves and in spurts, right? Yeah. But that was my first experience to college coaching, and I remember my first practice, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. These dudes are ridiculous, and they're freshmen, they're 18-year-old kids. And so watching Coach Miller develop relationships with them day in and day out, buying to them as people versus just, them as part of the basketball team was so eye-opening for me, to realize that, hey, like you got in this to help young men, and that's the right way to do it. That's the way to do it. Develop relationships, take time to care, take time, out of your day to really get to know them, what makes them tick, what makes them want to be successful.
Yeah.
So
no,
that experience was like unlike any other. Anything else, my first year.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's good stuff. I think that's even good for players to listen to that as well. So I know that'll help for sure. Speaking of junior college, what's your favorite JUCO memory?
Oh man,
could be funny. It could be just one that you really enjoyed.
There's so many you can go down the list.
Yeah.
I know all of us JUCO coaches say we need to write a book someday.
Yeah.
I would say that first year, there's one that really vivid. I remember we were on the road early in the year with that group, and we were at Missouri West Plains, and it was a 15-hour drive from Hobbs, New Mexico. And we were out there, and we were kind of up and down as a team so far. We had won games, but we really hadn't started playing well. It was still early in the year. Everybody's trying to kind of figure out their identity, right? Where they exist on that team. And we went out there, and right when we got into town, the heater broke out on the bus. And it was like an old school bus, right? And it was December in Missouri, and it was cold. It was cold. It was cold and snowy, and it was luckily we got to the hotel by the time we were there, and we were like, all right, heater broke out. Okay, cool. Let's play these games. We ended up going 3-0 that weekend. Luckily, we ended up beating Missouri West Plains on the last night on a last-second shot.
Wow.
And all the games we played in there were really close. And so I remember thinking, man, this would have been really brutal if we had lost 3 games instead of won 3 games. Right? Amazing what 1 or 2 shots can do to change your attitude as a coach. And we're getting back on the bus, and the heater still isn't working. And we got 15 hours. So I think I remember taking a picture. Luckily, I remember the hotel was really nice. The women working in the hotel heard our guys complaining about it. And they had a bunch of blankets they were about to get rid of. And they're like, do you guys want these? And, every single dude was grabbing them and pillows. And there's a picture on our bus of a bunch of dudes just blanketed up. And it was a maze, right? Every junior college coach knows that bus look after a 10-hour drive where you can't get to the back, it was an experience unlike any other, but that trip, as brutal as it was at the time, as much as you wanted to complain about the situation, the guys cared about winning while we were there. And it really brought us closer together. I think that I remember that trip being such a kicking off point for that team. I felt like for those guys to really grow up. And that's always something that memory always sticks with me, because especially now being at Division I level, we're going to have our issues with travel. Yeah. Guys are going to complain about being on a flight, commercial flight. And it's like, hey, man, this could be a lot worse, right? So absolutely. That perspective, which I gathered really quickly at NMJC, I always remember that. I'll remember that until I'm done doing this.
Oh, I bet. Speaking of travel, when I was at Northwestern State, we were flying back from Gonzaga, and we had the laundry detergent in one of the bags, and it busted while we were checking in for the airport. And then everyone kind of froze, and I was like, go get paper towels, like someone. We're about to hold up the whole line. We're up there scrubbing detergent, and it's just like smearing. It's
all over
the know what to do.
So, it's just life's of those stories, man. All these coaches, you said that's why the Final Four is so great, because you get to hear new stories every year, or something that these guys experience that nobody's ever heard of, right? You always hear new stuff that happens.
Yeah,
so that's why I love it. That's why I love it.
It's good. What will your roles be at Southern Utah?
So we like I said, we got a whole new staff. Coach Jeter's first year here at Southern Utah. He's got Coach Alan Hansen with him, who came over from Western Illinois. So we'll have the duties. I'm a recruiter, and he and I are going to share the load trying to figure out the recruiting stuff with Coach Williams, and then mostly offense. I'm going to be right with Coach Jeter, kind of working on the offensive stuff, which is unique for me, honestly. And that's, kind of crazy that we became that way at Casper. Yeah. My first 4 or 5 years at NMJC, I spent so much time being under a guy that coached defense so well, taught it so well. That was kind of my niche for a little while there. And then I just love the offensive side of the ball, and I just kind of naturally gravitated towards it. And I think Coach Jeter probably looked at some of the same stats that you did that, you kind of don't even realize, dang, we were really good on the offensive side. So, we're gonna mostly be on that side of it. But it's such a team effort. This staff is so great to work with. These guys share the load. There's no egos. So I'm really excited to kind of get the ball rolling with them.
Yeah. That's good. Speaking of, having a coach that you worked under really good defensively and stuff like that, talk about some stuff that you liked from him, you adapted, and then some of your favorite practice drills as well.
Yeah. So we would always build towards what we called the perfect 35 at the time, because it was 35-second shot clock. And some of the stuff that I really liked under Coach Miller was that it was so detail oriented. And it probably got boring to our guys and frustrating, but we just made it really clear from day one: when they screw up, we stop them, right? It was just stop playing. You're not going to do that again, And then those guys get really tired of hearing that whistle, So they're just going. It's kind of like a war of attrition at that point, right? Who's going to break, you guys or us? Yeah. Probably not going to be us, and especially isn't going to be him, James Miller. So. Just the little details of which hand to have up on a closeout, where we want to force guys, can't let them get to a certain spot on the floor. I really liked that stuff, but perfect 35 was brutal. And there was one day I remember we had a really sluggish practice in the afternoon, and he decided to just kick him out and say, we'll come back tonight. so which is the dreaded words that any guy
Yeah.
right? In junior college, you can do that, especially, right? You can just say there. That's what we always used to threaten those guys with. Hey, man, if you don't pick it up, we can always come back tonight. Usually we'll get guys going pretty quick.
Yeah.
And we brought them back one night, and it was just perfect 35 is what we started with. And it was 35 seconds on the shot clock, one team on defense. They have to give us a full 35 seconds of stops. And if they screwed up one thing, whether it was the wrong hand closeout, giving up a middle drive, not boxing out on a rebound, or giving them out, it would start the clock over, right, and start the possession over. So we ended up doing that for about 2 hours because one team was on defense for about an hour and 10 minutes. I'm honestly shocked we didn't have a fight. We didn't just have a completely knockdown, drag out, blowout, either with us or the players.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where when they accomplish it and you truly make it hard on them to accomplish, they feel like they can accomplish anything.
Yeah.
Right. Then they know, man, we are really good at defense. Like we just went through that for, an hour, and coach was being, petty about everything. But I think it taught those guys something, and trying to implement that. I wish I would have used it a little bit more at Casper. It was just a matter of telling yourself this practice might take 3.5 hours. So you just got to be okay with it, right? And you're like, especially as the head coach, be like, hey, I'm okay with us being here for this long. That one's hard to implement at a lot of levels, but you can do it certain different ways with tweaks. Because I think it is really important just to get guys to play. And then we would throw wrinkles in where it was like, if you give up an offensive rebound, their natural reaction in that drill is to always slump their shoulders, right? Like, oh, the clock's going to start back over. Like, so you got to get them to a point where it's like, no, if you get the stop, maybe you get the ball back or something, or maybe we keep the clock where it is, right? You can always kind of add wrinkles so that guys keep playing and don't give up on a play after making a mistake, right? Build that up after you make the mistake. Okay, you can't quit, So, I think it's first important to get them to understand how important those details are, and then get them to understand that not everybody's going to be perfect. What are you going to do when you make a mistake?
Yeah. No, it's good. That's really good stuff. So I know one time this year I got to the point too where I was like, hey, we're practicing later. Where I'm kicking you out. And so our AD walked up to our office. You passed the assistant's office and then mine. And I heard him ask the assistants, why aren't y'all practicing? They're like, do not talk to Blake. Like he is not happy right now. And so he was like, all right. So I heard him kind of walk and he walked the other way. I was like, and then we practiced later that night and we probably had the best practice you could ever imagine. So
those situations are always brutal on the assistants, right? Because especially at junior college, you got to tell the assistants, like, make sure everybody shows up to practice tonight, because then you're just creating one problem with another, right? It's like, make sure they all show up, man. Like, get them on the bus here so we can make sure that we get this thing done, right? Like, but those are the dreaded words. You break it down in the huddle. We're coming back tonight.
That's for sure. Before we break it down and get out of here, who you have winning the finals?
Man, I'm a Colorado guy at heart, so I got to go with the Nuggets, even though I'm a little scared.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm trying to see them do something special for the city. So, but yeah, man, that Jimmy Butler bringing that JUCO attitude to it, it's amazing to watch how good they both are, So I'm hoping the Nuggets, man.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. Any closing words or anything you want to tell the listeners, or any advice that you want to share with anybody before we head out?
Yeah, I think I always think back to the early parts of my career, and still even now, getting people in your corner that truly care about you, and knowing that you're not going to do this all by yourself is important, but also trying to take ownership of your role wherever you're at. You can't have an ego. I think basketball gods and karma is real. And at some point in your career, if you act the wrong way, it's going to hurt you. Yeah. So I really do think you can't have an ego, but you have to have a confidence that you know what you're doing when it comes to coaching your players. But I've been really lucky just to get to this point. And I'm extremely grateful for it. And, I always think back to the guys that are in my circle, not just the guys who have hired me, but just the guys in this business who are so consistent with their effort to make sure that you're doing all right. The Ross Hodges, Jace Hurl, Hank Plona, Cole Dewey. There's a lot. I mean, the list goes up. Brian Burton. There's countless dudes that have seen me start my career and being completely clueless. And all those dudes would probably tell you I'm still clueless, but but at least they've kind of rocked with me the whole time.
Yeah.
So there's so many of them like that. And I just think it's so important to form those genuine relationships with guys that you think are, you could talk to once every, 2 days or once every 2 months, and it's still going to be the same. So I think you got to really try and find those relationships because it's going to help you out in this business the right way.
Yeah. No, that's good. Well, this has been fun, Coach, and excited y'all are getting rolling for practice and stuff. I know that's been fun. So hope you have a good rest of your week and enjoyed it.
Yep. Appreciate it, Blake. Thank you guys for having me.
Yep. Absolutely.